Okay, so this is a problem that I've been having with my 2004 Ford F250 Super Duty. Has the 6.0 liter diesel engine in it, and this only started just a few weeks ago. It happened to me first on a pretty cold morning, and I did not have the block heater plugged in. And I thought, it's pretty cold, but it shouldn't be so cold where I'm having a problem starting it. And so I didn't think much about it. I came back to it a day later. I didn't really need the truck that day. I was just going to drive it because we don't really drive this truck all that often. We mainly use it to pull our horse trailer with. And so I came back to it a day or two later, and it cranked right up. And I thought, okay, well that's a little strange. It shouldn't have given me that problem, but it did. And then I just kind of left it alone. And then again the other morning, and it was only in about mid 40s. Once again, or this time we did have it plugged in to the block heater, and it would not crank for us for nothing. And it did exactly what it was doing right there. It attempts to catch. It attempts to turn over, but it doesn't do it. It almost seems like it's not getting fuel that it needs. So anyway, I have just started to do some research on it, and so I'm going to try a couple things here today. One of the things I'm going to do first, I just have a philosophy of always go easy early. And so what I'm going to try first is to put new batteries in it. It's probably been maybe about 3 or 4 years since I put the batteries in that are in there now. And so I'm just going to go ahead and swap out batteries because there is an issue that you deal with on these, the 6.0 in particular. I think the 6.4 is the same. Some of you guys that are good with these diesels, let me know if I'm wrong about this, but I know the 6.0, it has a fuel injector command module and FICM. One, it has to have adequate voltage that's coming from the batteries in order for it to activate and provide the fuel flow to the injectors. And secondly, it has to have oil pressure. And so the first thing I'm going to go after is make sure that I have adequate voltage that's coming from the batteries. Now, of course, these vehicles have 2 batteries in them, and sometimes a battery voltage issue can be masked because one battery is putting out adequate voltage and the other one is not. If they're not both putting out adequate voltage, then that FICM may not be sending the signals to the injectors to get my fuel flow. So I'm going to go ahead and swap out both batteries right now. And then the other issue that I may be dealing with may be, of course, I'm going to do an oil change on it as well and change out the oil filter. I may be having an issue inside of the oil filter housing, and that I may have some debris in there that is preventing oil pressure from building up and sending that signal to the FICM. And then lastly, what I'm going to try is changing out the fuel filters, and that's just basic with an oil change. I try to do that about every second or third oil change anyway, but when I started having this problem, I got to thinking, damn, when was the last time I changed a fuel filter? So that'll be the other issue. But for right now, I'm going to go easy early, and I'm going to swap out the batteries on it, and with each one of these items that I'm going to do, the batteries, the oil, and the fuel filters, I'll see if I start to get some improvement with this starting situation. So that's what I'm going to do right now, is swap out the batteries on the beast. Alright, so I'm going to disconnect negative terminals first on both batteries. Just get all ground off of this while I'm going through this process. Just set it off to the side. These are 8mm nuts that are on these terminals. off easy. I'm actually starting to think that this isn't going to be a voltage problem with the batteries. I may be wrong, but I put a test gauge on there just a second ago. It didn't show me exact voltage. It just told me whether or not I had at least 12 volts, and I did have at least 12 volts on both of these batteries. And I was sitting here looking at what's left of this information tag that's on there, and it's only been 2 years since I've replaced these. Now I've got both negatives off, so I'm going to go ahead and take the positive off here too. So I don't know. I'd be really surprised that it was actually the batteries that may be worn down. Now, I don't know. You've got these vehicles and you don't drive them that much, and the old philosophy on that is it seems like more things go wrong with them when they just sit, as opposed to if you're driving them all the time. And so I'll put the new ones in there and we'll figure it out. I mean, I've got the new ones, so I don't mind trying it. So, okay, and then right down in there next to the battery, this is one of those stays that kind of keeps the battery from bouncing around down in there. It's also an 8mm, and it's right there, and it's very easily accessible. Say it's easily accessible. If you got fingers like an orangutan, you can get in there. But anyway, don't hit those terminals. Yeah, so it's one of those things. You see those. It's just a wedge that goes down in there, and it holds the battery in place. So one of those is over here on the passenger side. I'll set that there. Okay, so I've got those disconnected. And in case you're thinking and reading the manual a little too much, which I try not to do, I didn't go in there and save a memory or anything like that. This isn't one of those real nice trucks with GPS in it and all that kind of stuff. So it was just radio stations that I might have to reset. So I didn't bother about going in there and doing any of that stuff. Just disconnected the negatives first, came back and disconnected the positives, yanked this thing out of here, and let's go from there. And these batteries are about 80 pounds a piece. And I'm doing all this on a ladder. I love these lifted trucks, but when it comes time to start working on them, it's a challenge. All right, got that one out. All right, so do some acrobats here. One foot on the tire, another one on the ladder. Hold my tongue just right. Let's see if I can get this thing out of here now. This one shouldn't be too bad. It's pretty straightforward. One hand curl. All right, now, how do I get down? All right. Got it. Yay, team. Let me go get the other batteries. That in. Slide my box back down. Put it it all on just the opposite of how you took it off. Positives first. Dude back in there. New batteries installed. Now I'm always hoping for the easy fix. Let's go in there and see if it was a voltage issue that goes to that fuel injector control module. After taking the voltage on those ones that were in here, I'm starting to have my doubts that that's what it was. But let's crank it. Let's try to crank it here real quick and see what happens. Okay, so right off, that's not it. So it's not wanting to hit on all cylinders at this point. It's not a cold issue because it's about 70, 75 degrees out here right now. So it's cranking a little bit better with the new batteries in there as far as having a little bit more hit to it. But batteries is not it. So what I am going to do right here is go ahead and change the secondary fuel filter and see if that makes a difference right off. And then I may go ahead and go for the primary filter too, which is up there underneath the chassis. But let me go ahead and hit the secondary filter real quick and just take a look at those filters. Okay, so this is the secondary fuel filter. The oil filter is underneath this cap. This is a 24 millimeter, but I don't have a 24 millimeter socket, but a 15/16 socket fits it. So let's see if I can get this off without stripping it. Damn it, it's on there tight. All right, at least it's coming on. I didn't strip it. All right. get this dude off here. Okay. Okay, this also has an O-ring on it, which is right in there. The kit comes with an O-ring, so I will be able to replace that. And then this should have a certain amount of spring on it, and it does. That's good, which means I'm not having an issue down there on the bottom with that poppet valve. All right, so here is the secondary fuel filter. Okay, so I got the new filter out of the kit, and it actually, there's a side right here that's kind of enclosed right here. It has a couple grooves in here, and what that's used for is it fits inside of this cap. So you take that part that's not open, it's kind of enclosed, as opposed to, if you see that, it's open all the way down in there. That's so the fuel can come up from the fuel system and filter through here and then refiltrate down into the system. So don't get these backwards. Don't put the open side into the cap. It almost feels like it kind of wants to go in there like that. But you want that enclosed side in there, and it fits a lot more snug. You actually have to kind of press it in, and when it's in there right, that filter's not coming out. And then the other thing is this O-ring right here. I replaced it with a new one, and new O-rings come in the kit. When you buy these fuel filter kits, I got this from the dealership. And the reason that I get these from the dealership is that there is a lot of black market motorcraft items out there. You might be getting them off of eBay or somebody else, and they're not necessarily the factory product. And for these 6.0 engines, it is very important that you use the factory products and that you use the factory filters. So anyway, I've got that now in there. I've got the open side down to where it will filtrate into the filter the way that it's supposed to. I've got the new O-ring on. And I'm just going to run my finger around in here and just... I don't see anything extremely obvious to me in this system. So I'm going to screw it back down, and this is only the secondary filter. To really do justice to changing out these fuel filters, I need to go up underneath and do the primary one as well. There is a designated torque spec on that, and it is that was it right there. Don't do a gorilla torque on it. Just make sure that it's down tight, and you're going to be fine. Okay, so that is the secondary filter. So now I am item 2 into my issue here. I have replaced the batteries. I've done the secondary filter. Okay, I am now up underneath the chassis of the truck. This would be the left-hand side, the driver's side, and right down in here is the forward part of the step rail front tire right there. So this gives you an approximity of where I'm at right here. And so there is the primary fuel filter, and so I am going to take it off and replace it with a new one. And my quest here to figure out what my driving or my starting issue is. So far I think it probably is just the fuel filters. All other indications aren't really pointing towards that it might be a control module or anything like that. But I did order a scan tool or a scan gauge, I should say, to monitor all those other parameters just to make sure. But right now I'm going after the fuel filters and doing an oil change, and we'll see where we stand after that. But this is actually metric, but I have just determined that a 1 7/16 wrench is going to work on that. I don't have a socket that size, but I do have a wrench that size. So I'm going to go ahead and take that off, and we'll swap out this filter. All right, we got the cap off. And we'll get this filter out. Easier said than done. All right, straight out. It's kind of a all right, diesel fuel running down my arm. You gotta love it, baby. Yeah, I'm going to tell you something. I think this thing was pretty well saturated. Look at that. Up there at the very top, you can kind of see where, you know, you got a little bit of filter left, but I mean, this thing is completely saturated. I'm thinking that that was well overdue. Okay, so I got the new filter. The primary and secondary filters come in, if you get them from Ford, or if you get the Motorcraft product, then it comes in the kit, which is the FD 4616, which comes with both the primary and secondary filter. Each filter cap will come with a replacement O-ring. And so obviously I've already put the secondary one in already. So we will get this one off of here. Do away with that. And it has a little flat spot in them. It's probably best not to try to reuse these, especially the kit comes with it already. Might be kind of hard to pick up on, but you can see on the inside right in here that it's obviously flat. And so anytime you see a disfigured or malformed O-ring like that, just go ahead and replace it, especially if you have a new one. Clean that groove up a little bit. And I'll just slide the other one on. It's chilly out this morning, so my hands aren't really working the way I'd like for them to. make sure it's not too completely twisted. Alright, so that should be okay. And then the new filter, and this filter already comes with a packing or an O-ring that's already on this end of it. And this will be the end that will slide into the fuel pump. And the thing that you're most interested in with this OEM filter is the fact that it has a tab up here on the top. And the way that that fuel pump housing is configured is that when this slides into that housing, then it actually has a lip up at the 12 o'clock position that when you put this in and you start tightening it, then this filter is going to rotate a little bit once it gets up into that housing, but it'll catch on that lip. So this tab right here, when you initially put it in, you can just kind of put it a little bit off from the 12 o'clock position, and then it'll naturally want to rotate when you're tightening it down, and then it'll contact that tab that's on that fuel pump housing. And so the reason, you really don't have a choice, it's going to do it on its own, but the reason that that is there is because they want this vent hole right here to be at the 12 o'clock position. And the reason for that is obviously gravity is going to have the fuel want to stay around the bottom of the filter. And since I have this vent hole in here, what will happen is it'll allow a certain amount of fuel to recirculate and utilize the entire filter, instead of just letting gravity use maybe the bottom half or maybe even the bottom 2/3 of it. By having that vent hole in there, it allows the entire filter to be used for maximum circulation. That's something you need to look out for. Some of your aftermarket fuel filters, they may be cheaper, but they don't have this vent hole and they don't have this tab. They just kind of screw into the fuel pump. And what you find out is when you pull these things out later, that you'll see that maybe only a portion of this filter was being utilized because that circulation was not being allowed to take place. You weren't getting maximum effect from that fuel filter. So what I've learned with these 6.0s is you know, they're temperamental anyway. There was a lot of things that were not done right when they built them. It's a good engine all in all, but some of the EGR coolant methods that they use, oil cooling that they used, that type of thing wasn't necessarily up to par in my opinion. So I just feel like it's best to go with the OEM products. They were designed specifically for that engine, and this is one of the things that may not seem like all that big of a deal, but it is actually very important. That tab and that vent hole are actually very important. And so just to give a comparison here, that filter was definitely in need of being replaced. I have a feeling that that was just my complacency there and not looking after this the way that I needed to, and it created a starting issue for me. So let's just hope that that's all that it is. All right, so let's get back under there and put this thing back in. All right. Damn, make sure you get the right socket next time. Okay, so both of the fuel filters have now been changed, and the recommended method for purging any air out of the fuel system is to go through a starting sequence here, and or not actually start, but a key sequence here where I am going to turn it on, no start. In other words, turn the key on, don't start it. Let it run like that for a few minutes, or not a few minutes, but maybe about 20-30 seconds. Turn it back off. Do it again. And what we're doing is letting the fuel pump engage and start to circulate that fuel before there's a demand, and let it purge that air out. It's going to find its way through its own vent system. Manufacturer's specs says to do this 6 times. But I've seen some other cool kids on YouTube that have gone through this procedure, and they said you don't necessarily have to do it that many times. They said do it at least a few times. So I think that's 3. Okay, let's go ahead and try to start it. That was 4 times. Cranked right up. And no missing. I'm getting a little bit of a stutter there. Just thinking about it. Yeah, that might still be a little air in the system there, so. Getting a little bit of hesitation where it feels like it's knocking a little bit. And I could very well have some stiction on my injectors as well that I still will need to look into. I'll know that once I get my... Actually, I don't know if this scan gauge that I'm going to be getting will be able to give me that information. I might end up having to take it to the dealership and have them put it on their scanner that checks for things a little bit more intricately than that scan gauge that I'm getting. But that just smoothed out. So, all right. So anyway, so from where I started the other day, and I couldn't even get it to start, put new batteries in it, and once again, you know, that FICM that I was talking about that requires a minimum voltage in order for the fuel injectors to work, you know, that doesn't necessarily indicate that I have low batteries. Batteries could be a portion of that equation, but you know, that thing has, that particular module has a step-up transformer in it that takes the 12-volt system and steps it up into a 48-volt. So any voltage issues that I may be having that are inside of that control module would be a control module issue. But the one place that I did want to start is with the batteries. Was I dealing with low voltage coming from the batteries to begin with? And I don't think that was initially my problem, but I went ahead and changed the batteries anyway. And then the next thing that was the issue, or that I tried the other day, was that I put the secondary filter in, and it did crank. It was still a little rough, but it cranked. And then now I've just put the primary filter in, the inline filter, and it cranked right up, and it's running great. And then I'll follow on with being able to monitor some of the other systems on this when I get the scan gauge that I ordered. It should be here in a couple days, and I'll probably do another video on that
although there's plenty of them out there from guys that know a lot more about these things than I do. But I may do another video as far as just hooking that in, programming it, and what are some of the parameters that I'm looking at with my particular 6.0. All right, so there's my experience. I had a 2004 Ford F250 with the 6.0 in it that had a crank but no start issue. I tackled it by putting new batteries in it, 2 new fuel filters, and then I'm also going to go ahead and do an oil change on it. But for right now, I think I'm pretty happy with I was able to get to that crank but no start issue with it. So I'll keep you up on what's going on, little issues that I come across with it. Hopefully there won't be many more, but I'll keep you up on what's going on with it and any conclusions that I come to.